Hey, we're live. Hello, everybody. Hi, Esty. Hi, Tila. Glad to have you here today for another thrilling installment of the Isolated Literary Society presents Daily Austen Persuasion. We will be continuing today with, I keep going back and forth between these two editions of Persuasion. I feel like this one, the cover is a little more like, picturesque and thematically period appropriate, but I like reading a paperback better. So anyway, oh, hi, Mom. No, she's not here. As you just said, Mom says hi, so I assume they were just on the phone or something.
Okay. Maybe she was tuning in.
Honestly, she should. Again. She would probably enjoy some Jane Austen.
Does she like? Has she seen any of the adaptations?
I don't know for sure. I know she read an adaptation of Emma by Alexander something McCall or McCall Smith.
Oh,
am I remembering the name? Alexander McCall Smith.
I mean, that is an author.
Yeah, he's the white guy from who grew up in Africa, and then he writes stories about.
He wrote the number one ladies detective agency.
Yes, that's the one.
Yes,
the white guy who writes stories about people in Africa.
Also Scotland. He does write other things too, but he's probably best known for that one.
The only book I've read by him is the number one ladies detective agency, which I did not care for.
I think it's fairly fairly. I think that's as well known.
Yeah, and then the only other book by him I'm even aware of is my mom read this adaptation of Emma, which was set in, I think, Tanzania or something like that. So,
interesting.
Anyway, that's his deal. So, I haven't. A certain viewer of the stream commented to me last night. They were surprised, shocked even, that I've never seen a particular adaptation of Persuasion. Now I've forgotten the name of the two actors that were in it. Kieran Hines
and Amanda Root.
I was like, I don't know either of those actors, but I'm sure
I maintain that if she sees Kieran Hines, she will recognize him.
Yeah, I probably will. The name was familiar enough that I remembered it just
You might even recognize Amanda Root. I don't know.
It's totally possible.
Yeah.
Entirely within the realm of possibility. I know the faces of way more actors than I know the names of.
Right, exactly.
As is the case with most people. As he confidently says, you will recognize him. Hey, Michelle, I'm glad that you made it. Just doing that,
Esty, I want to know if you've seen the more recent BBC adaptation, though.
Have you seen the more recent BBC adaptation?
With Rupert Penry Jones and what's her name? Sally Walker?
Sure. Those sound like names.
Sally Walker, Sally Hawkins? God, I can never remember her name.
Yeah. I mean, those both sound like they could be a person.
She was in The Shape of Water, among other things.
Oh, yeah, I think Hawkins?
Yeah.
I feel like I've heard that name.
I know it's really close to a name that is not a person, but a type of dance.
Sadie Hawkins.
Yes, but that's
the
not
dance.
Actually her name.
Yes.
It's very close to that. So Sally Hawkins sounds right.
Sally Hawkins sounds good. I mean, I believe it.
Anyway.
As she says, she has seen clips on YouTube, but not the whole movie.
For my money, they are both excellent adaptations.
Oh,
and Taproot did a play, which was a musical, which you would not think would be good.
I know. I heard about that. This local theater did a musical of Persuasion, and I was like, honestly, I mean, a musical of a Jane Austen book already sounds a little bit like, okay.
Yeah.
But when I heard it was Persuasion, I'm like, I don't know that I remember the story of Persuasion super clearly, but it does not, like, if you had to pick a Jane Austen novel that would most lend itself to a musical.
Doesn't seem like that one.
No, not Persuasion.
There were like a couple awkward parts, but for the most part, it was really good.
Honestly, Northanger Abbey, I feel like it's the most dramatic and awesome. Like it's short, so there's lots of room to squeeze in songs and still keep most of the story there.
Yeah.
And everyone's a caricature and being very dramatic, and you could act out all of the scenes from the books that she imagines.
Yeah.
I would go see a Northanger Abbey musical. That would be great.
That would be awesome.
Someone please do that. when musicals can happen again.
Yes.
Maybe I need to do it. Maybe I need to start working on it now. It's in the public domain. There's nothing to stop me from writing my first musical.
I think that might have been what prompted these guys to do it.
What? Oh, that was in the public domain.
Yeah.
They must have
also other inspiration, but
they must have wanted to do Persuasion in particular, and that's what. Anyway, I would love to hear from someone who actually saw the musical, like what it was like. Like I heard generally. Oh, you did? Oh,
yeah.
I thought you just said you'd heard of it. I didn't realize you'd seen it.
No. That's why I said it had a couple awkward parts, but for the most part, it was really good.
Yeah, I didn't hear. Sorry, my brain was so focused on the weirdness.
That's all right.
Of this existence.
We can talk about it later. It's all right.
Anyway, there's just not a single moment in this book, from what I remember. Again, it's been a while since I read it, that I feels like the characters would want to break into song. I don't know. Anyway, let's get into the book. We read chapters 1 and 2 yesterday, where we were just sort of introduced to the characters, although mostly to the characters other than Anne, our heroine, and introduced only Anne. Oh, hello, Aaron. I'm glad you made it. So what happened yesterday was basically we met the characters. We found out that Anne's father, Sir Walter, is in debt, and he must give up Kellynch Hall, their home, but he won't sell it. So they are just moving to a smaller, cheaper to keep up house in Bath.
He won't even sell off parts of the property.
Yeah, he refuses to even sell off parts of the property because it's like he must leave it to his whoever.
Yeah.
His heir, which there isn't one because
no, there is. It's his second cousin or something.
Oh, right. But like
his name is also
Walter
Elliot, I think.
Yeah, that's true. So he is still the heir presumptive. Yeah. Just not for the reason that they originally
No, he's the heir presumptive because he's going to, like, the same way that Mr. Collins is going to inherit Longbourn.
Right. Yes. Sorry.
But that is why the oldest daughter.
But he would much rather it was a grandchild.
Yeah.
Or a son-in-law, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyway, we were left with the decision that they are going to move to Bath and they're going to let the house, although Sir Walter refuses to advertise that they're going to let the house.
It just has to be approached by a sensible person.
SD says that in the Persuasion movie she has, Mary is played by an actor who later plays Miss Bates in one of the Emma movies.
Oh,
which I can see that.
I can't think of her name.
We haven't really met Mary
really
yet.
Familiar. I know who she's talking about, and yeah.
All right. Oh, and also we just ended the last chapter with like Lady Russell was opposed to Elizabeth making friends with some lady.
Oh, yes.
The lawyer's sister, Mrs. Clay.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, good. Send her to Bath so she doesn't hang out with this upstart widow. Anyways.
We have thoughts about Lady Russell. She's an interesting character.
Yeah. Yes, we do. I suspect I was kind of seeing her as a Mrs. Weston type, but I feel like she's maybe not going to be as wholesome as Mrs. Weston. We'll see. You are silent on the subject.
We shall see.
I must take leave to observe, Sir Walter, said Mr. Shepherd one morning at Kellynch Hall as he laid down the newspaper, that the present juncture is much in our favor. This peace will be turning all our rich naval officers ashore. They will be all wanting a home.
Oh, peace.
Peace, yes. Peace, and prosperity.
For some reason in my head, I just was thinking PIEC.
Yeah, peace of what?
Yeah.
Yes. Apparently, there's a lull or some sort of
a lull in the fighting.
A lull in fighting. Could not be a better time, Sir Walter, for having a choice of tenants, very responsible tenants. Many a noble fortune has been made during the war. If a rich admiral were to come in our way, Sir Walter, he would be a very lucky man, Shepherd, replied Sir Walter. That's all I have to remark. A prize indeed would Kellynch Hall be to him. Rather, the greatest prize of all. Let him have taken ever so many before. Hey, Shepherd? Mr. Shepherd laughed, as he knew he must, at his wit, and then added, I presume to observe, Sir Walter, that in the way of business, gentlemen of the navy are well to deal with. I have had a little knowledge of their methods of doing business, and I am free to confess that they have very liberal notions, and are as likely to make desirable tenants as any set of people one should meet with. Therefore, Sir Walter, what I would take leave to suggest is, that if in consequence of any rumors getting abroad of your intention, which must be contemplated as a possible thing, because we know how difficult it is to keep the actions and designs of one part of the world from the notice and curiosity of the other, consequence has its tax, I, John Shepherd, might conceal any family matters that I choose, for nobody would think it worth their while to observe me. But Sir Walter Elliot has eyes upon him which it may be very difficult to elude, and therefore thus much I venture upon, that it will not greatly surprise me if, with all our caution, some rumor of the truth get abroad, in the supposition of which, as I was going to observe, since applications will unquestionably follow, I should think any from our wealthy naval commanders particularly worth attending to, and beg leave to add that 2 hours will bring me over at any time to save you the trouble of replying.
Wow.
Wow, there's a lot of words just to say, if one of said naval officers wants to rent your house, you should do it.
Yeah. I feel like Sir Walter kind of needs to be handled.
Yes, no, that is absolutely what I got from that was not that Mr. Shepherd is long-winded,
right?
But that
he knows how Walter needs to be
handled. Knows to manage. He introduces the idea that the news might get out, and then has to explain. Right. Well, you're an important person. There will always be curiosity. Anyway, as I was saying,
yes, he's kind of like Mr. Woodhouse, but not as dear.
Yes, no, I feel like Sir Walter,
not as sweet and innocent.
Yeah, is way more pompous.
Oh yeah,
Mr. Woodhouse is more
and vain. He's incredibly,
which makes sense. He is. I mean, he's a sir.
Yes, Mr. Woodhouse is. He's just really sweet.
Yeah,
he's naive.
He's sweet. Naive and kind of ridiculous.
Yeah,
but he's sweet, and yeah, Sir Walter so far is a bit.
He's just
as Tila just said, Walter is a lot.
He's super extra, and he's super garbage.
Sir Walter only nodded, but soon afterwards, rising and pacing the room, he observed sarcastically, "There are few among the gentlemen of the navy, I imagine, who would not be surprised to find themselves in a house of this description. They would look around them, no doubt, and bless their good... They would look around them, no doubt, and bless their good fortune," said Mrs. Clay, for Mrs. Clay was present. Her father had driven her over, nothing being of so much use to Mrs. Clay's health as a drive to Kellynch. "But I quite agree with my father in thinking a sailor might be a very desirable tenant. I have known a good deal of the profession, and besides their liberality, they are so neat and careful in all their ways. These valuable pictures of yours, Sir Walter, if you chose to leave them, would be perfectly safe. Everything in and about the house would be taken such excellent care of. The gardens and shrubberies would be kept in almost as high order as they are now. You need not be afraid, Miss Elliot, of your own sweet flower gardens being neglected." "As to all of that," rejoined Sir Walter coolly, "supposing I were induced to let my house, I have no means made up my mind as to the privileges to be annexed to it. I am not particularly disposed to favor a tenant." Yes, as Michelle just said, did she just admit she's known a lot of sailors? I was thinking that same thing, and I did not comment upon it, but that does seem to be what she just admitted.
Possibly.
Well, I know a lot about these naval types. Wink. The park would be open to him, of course, and few Navy officers or men of any other description can have had such a range. But what restrictions I might impose on the use of the pleasure grounds is another thing. I am not fond of the idea of my shrubberies being always approachable, and I should recommend Miss Elliot to be on her guard with respect to her flower garden. I am very little disposed to grant a tenant of Kellynch Hall any extraordinary favor, I assure you, be he sailor or soldier."
Good grief.
After a short pause, Mr. Shepherd presumed to say, "In all these cases, there are established usages which may everything plain and easy between landlord and tenant. Your interest, Sir Walter, is in pretty safe hands. Depend upon me for taking care that no tenant has more than his just rights. I venture to hint that Sir Walter Elliot cannot be half so jealous for his own as John Shepherd will be for him." Here Anne spoke. "The Navy, I think, who have done so much for us, have at least an equal claim with any other set of men for all the comforts and all the privileges which any home can give. Sailors work hard enough for their comforts, we must all allow. Now, very true, very true. What Miss Anne says is very true, was Mr. Shepherd's rejoinder, and oh, certainly, was his daughter's. But Sir Walter's remark was, soon afterwards, the profession has its utility, but I should be sorry to see any friend of mine belonging to it. Indeed, was the reply, with a look of surprise. Yes, it is in 2 points offensive to me. I have 2 strong grounds of objection to it. First, as being the means of bringing persons of obscure birth into undue distinction, and raising men to honors which their fathers and grandfathers never dreamt of. And secondly, as it cuts up a man's youth and vigor most horribly, a sailor grows old sooner than any other man. I have observed it all my life. A man is in greater danger in the Navy of being insulted by the rise of one his father might have disdained to speak to, and of becoming prematurely an object of disgust himself than in any other line. One day last spring in town, I was in company with 2 men, striking instances of what I am talking of. Lord St. Ives, whose father we all know to have been a country curate without bread to eat. I was to give place to Lord St. Ives, and a certain Admiral Baldwin, the most deplorable-looking personage you can imagine, his face the color of mahogany, rough and rugged to the last degree, all lines and wrinkles, 9 gray hairs of a side, and nothing but a dab of powder at top. In the name of heaven, who is that old fellow? Said I to a friend of mine who was standing near, Sir Basil Morley. Old fellow, cried probably Sir Basil. 40 and no more. Oh, sorry. Old fellow, cried Sir Basil. It is Admiral Baldwin. What do you take his age to be? 60, said I, or perhaps 62. 40, replied Sir Basil. 40 and no more. Picture to yourselves my amazement. I shall not easily forget Admiral Baldwin. I never saw quite so wretched an example of what a seafaring life can do, but to a degree I know it is the same with them all. They are all knocked about and exposed to every climate and every weather till they are not fit to be seen. It is a pity they are not knocked on the head at once before they reach Admiral Baldwin's age.
Wow.
Yeah, as Tila points out, Walter's the guy who treats retail workers like they're not people. We need these workers, but I don't associate with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as he points out, he's deeply in debt to everyone, and yet he doesn't think anything of the needs of the people who produce the things that he enjoys.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. No, I heard a story the other day of someone who worked in a coffee shop. The coffee shop was empty except for the employees. And a customer walked in holding a mask but not wearing it.
Huh.
And the employee said, "Could you please put on your mask?" And the woman looked around and said, "Why? There's nobody here."
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Nobody here but us employees. Nobody here but us workers. Anyway, boy, Mr. Sir Walter he is something.
Piece of work.
Yep.
I like how in the first chapter, Jane Austen explained that he was very handsome and charming, and that explains why.
Yeah.
His wife. got his wife to marry him.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Since we know that she was a sensible, pleasant sort of person.
Yeah. And I missed earlier, as you mentioned, we're talking about apparently you can live in the house, but you have to stay off the grounds. Don't you dare touch the shrubberies.
Don't go in the pleasure grounds.
The pleasure grounds.
The park is okay, but not the pleasure grounds.
Right. I actually don't know what the distinction is. I mean,
I don't either.
Obviously, the garden is considered part of the pleasure grounds, but
Apparently.
What is considered the park? I don't know.
Maybe the park is more wild.
Yeah, or more open,
more uncultivated.
Yeah,
lands or something.
You can walk around there, but not in the gardens that we've taken care of.
Wilderness.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah, no. I'm definitely leaning towards male Lady Catherine with my Sir Walter voice.
Yeah.
Nay, Sir Walter, cried Mrs. Clay, this is being severe indeed. Have a little mercy on the poor men. We are not all born to be handsome. The sea is no beautifier, certainly. Sailors do grow old betimes. I have often observed it. They soon lose the look of youth. But then, is it not the same with many other professions, perhaps most other? Soldiers in active service are not at all better off. And even if the quieter professions, there is toil and labor of the mind, if not the body, which seldom leaves a man's looks to the natural effect of time. The lawyer plods, quite careworn. The physician is up at all hours, and traveling in all weather. And even the clergyman. She stopped a moment to consider what might do for the clergyman. And even the clergyman, you know, is obliged to go into infected rooms and expose his health and looks to all the injury of a poisonous atmosphere.
Wow. Yes, indeed.
In fact, as I have long been convinced, though every profession is necessary and honorable in its turn, it is only the lot of those who are not obliged to follow any, who can live in a regular way in the country.
Regular way.
Choosing their own hours, following their own pursuits, and living on their own property without the torment of trying for more. It is only their lot, I say, to hold the blessings of health and a good appearance to the utmost.
Well, I mean, she's not wrong,
yeah, no,
but at the same time.
No, I actually feel like everything she's saying is pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
But she's saying it in a way that clearly Jane Austen thought she was ridiculous.
Yeah. Also, her conclusion is clearly not, so we need to rise up and destroy capitalism.
Right, yeah. No. She's like, so we should all be so lucky to be rich. I know no other set of men but what lose something of their personableness when they cease to be young. Oh, and we have an illustration of a scene that is not actually part of the book, but is only mentioned. I dare say, who's that old fellow?
I feel like this is the exact same illustrator as the...
Oh, yeah, no, this looks exactly the same as the edition of Emma that we had, which I don't know if that's original or not, but... right. Let's see. Oh, well, no, this illustration is actually 97, so it's not. It seemed as if Mr. Shepherd, in his anxiety to bespeak Sir Walter's goodwill toward a naval officer's tenant, had been gifted into foresight. For the very first application for the house was from an Admiral Croft, with whom he shortly afterwards fell into company in attending the quarter sessions at Taunton. And indeed, he had received a hint of the Admiral from a London correspondent. By the report which he hastened over to Kellynch to make, Admiral Croft was a native of Somersetshire. Somersetshire? Is that one of the ones that's you wouldn't think of how to pronounce it by the way it looks? Or is that Somersetshire?
I don't know.
Who, having acquired a very handsome fortune, was wishing to settle in his own country, and had come down to Taunton in order to look at some advertised places in that immediate neighborhood, which, however, had not suited him. That accidentally hearing, it was just as he had foretold, Mr. Shepherd observed, Sir Walter's concerns could not be kept a secret. Accidentally hearing of the possibility of Kellynch Hall being to let, and understanding his, Mr. Shepherd's, connection with the owner, he had inquired, he had introduced himself to him in order to make particular inquiries, and had, in the course of a pretty long conference, expressed as strong an inclination for the place as a man who knew it only by description could feel, and given Mr. Shepherd, in his explicit account of himself, every proof of his being a most responsible, eligible tenant. And who is Admiral Croft? Was Sir Walter's cold, suspicious inquiry. Mr. Shepherd answered for his being of a gentleman's family, and mentioned a place, and Anne, after a little pause which followed, added, "He is Rear Admiral of the White. He was in the Trafalgar action, and has been in the East Indies since. He has been stationed there, I believe, several years." "Then I take it for granted," observed Sir Walter, "that his face is about as orange as the cuffs and capes of my livery."
How dare such a person inhabit my halls?
Mr. Shepherd hastened to assure him that Admiral Croft was a very hale, hearty, well-looking man. A little weather-beaten, to be sure, but not much, and quite the gentleman in all his notions and behavior, not likely to make the smallest difficulty about terms, only wanted a comfortable home, and to get into it as soon as possible, knew he must pay for his convenience, knew what rent a ready-furnished house of that consequence might fetch, should not have been surprised if Sir Walter had asked more, had inquired about the manor, would be glad of the deputation, certainly, but made no great point of it. Said he sometimes took out a gun, but never killed. Quite the gentleman. He sometimes took out a gun, but never killed.
That sounds so bizarre, but like going shooting.
Yeah. But like,
Apparently.
sometimes go shooting, but I'm a terrible shot.
Either that or he shoots like clay pigeons or something.
Oh,
like that.
yes. I guess, yeah. I guess.
I think that was a thing.
Was that a thing at this time period?
I don't know. It sounds bizarre when you say it like that.
Yeah.
I sometimes take out a gun, but I never kill.
Yeah.
I just carry it in my hip pocket. Like,
Yeah.
You know, for fun.
Well, but I feel like in that time period also I have a sense of sport.
Yeah.
And men going shooting was a pretty common thing.
Yes.
So, yeah, as Michelle pointed out, maybe he's saying he goes on shooting parties, but then he doesn't actually shoot.
That is possible too. Yeah. Like you carry a gun because you're with the shooting party.
Yeah,
but
you just
don't actually want to.
But it also seems to be a list of things making him quite a gentleman. So it's like, was it actually considered better if you only went shooting but didn't actually shoot anything? I don't know.
If anyone, what about your friend, the one whose name I could never remember, who is an expert in all of these?
David.
Yes, these Regency things.
I know. I don't know if David was ever actually able to get caught up on Emma. He definitely never caught up to the point that we were able to have him in the live stream. But he has a kid, and life is difficult. Mr. Shepherd was eloquent on the subject, pointing out all the circumstances of the Admiral's family, which made him peculiarly, wow, I just can't say that word today, apparently, peculiarly desirable as a tenant. He was a married man and without children, the very state to be wished for. A house was never taken good care of, Mr. Shepherd observed, without a lady. He did not know whether furniture might not be in danger of suffering as much where there was no lady as where there were many children. A lady without a family was the best preserver of furniture in the world. He had seen Mrs. Croft, too. She was at Taunton with the Admiral, and had been present almost all the time they were talking the matter over. And a very well-spoken, genteel, shrewd lady she seemed to be, continued he. Asked more questions about the house, the terms, and taxes than the Admiral himself, and seemed more conversant with business. And moreover, Sir Walter, I found she was not quite unconnected in this country any more than her husband. That is to say, she is sister to a gentleman who did live amongst us once. She told me so herself. Sister to the gentleman who lived a few years back at Monkford. Bless me, what was his name? At this moment I cannot recollect his name, though I have heard it so lately. Penelope, my dear, can you help me to the name of the gentleman who lived at Monkford, Mrs. Croft's brother? But Mrs. Clay was talking so eagerly with Miss Elliot that she did not hear the appeal. I have no conception who you can mean, Shepherd. I remember no gentleman resident at Monkford since the time of old Governor Trent. Bless me, how very odd. I shall forget my own name soon, I suppose. My name that I am so very well acquainted with. A name that I am so very well acquainted with. Knew the gentleman so well by sight. Seen him 100 times. Came to consult me once, I remember, about a trespass on one of his neighbors. A farmer's man breaking into his orchard. Wall torn down, apples stolen. Caught in the fact, and afterwards, contrary to my judgment, submitted to an amicable compromise. Very odd indeed. After waiting another moment. You mean Mr. Wentworth, I suppose, said Anne. Mr. Shepherd was all gratitude. Wentworth was the very name. Mr. Wentworth was the very man. He had the curacy of Monkford, you know, Sir Walter, some time back, for 2 or 3 years. Came there about the year 5, I take it. You remember him, I am sure. Wentworth? Oh, aye, Mr. Wentworth, the curate of Monkford. You misled me by the term gentleman.
Yes.
Did you get the other one? Fucking Sir Walter.
Yeah.
Ugh.
It's just
No. Oh, that guy. Yes. I would have known who you meant immediately, but you said he was a gentleman, so I got it.
Just a peach of a person.
I thought you were speaking of some man of property. Mr. Wentworth was nobody, I remember. Quite unconnected. Nothing to do with the Strafford family. One wonders how the names of many of our nobility become so common. Just gonna give that a moment.
I feel like the cops are trying to prove how useful they can be.
Good luck with that. Yeah, Tila, that was quite a burn. You misled me by the term gentleman.
Oh, yeah.
As Mr. Shepherd perceived that this connection of the Crofts did them no service to Sir Walter, he mentioned it no more, returning with all his zeal to dwell on the circumstances more indisputably in their favour, their age and number and fortune, the high idea they had formed of Kellynch Hall, and extreme solicitude for the advantage of renting it, making it appear as if they ranked nothing beyond the happiness of the tenants of making it appear as they ranked nothing beyond the happiness of being the tenants of Sir Walter. An extraordinary taste, certainly, could they have been supposed in the secret of Sir Walter's estimate of the dues of the tenant. It succeeded, however, and though Sir Walter must ever look with an evil eye on anyone intending to inhabit that house, and think them infinitely too well off in being permitted to rent it on the highest terms, he was talked into allowing Mr. Shepherd to proceed in the treaty, and authorizing him to wait on Admiral Croft, who still remained at Taunton, and fix a day for the house being seen. Sir Walter was not very wise, but still he had experience enough of the world to feel that a more unobjectionable tenant in all essentials than Admiral Croft bid fair to be could hardly offer. At least he had that much sense. So far went his understanding, and his vanity supplied a little additional soothing in the Admiral's situation in life, which was just high enough and not too high. I have let my house to Admiral Croft would sound extremely well, very much better than to any mere Mr. or Mr. Oh, sorry. Very much better than to any mere Mr. A Mr., save perhaps some half-dozen in the nation, always needs a note of explanation. An admiral speaks his own consequence, and at the same time can never make a baronet look small. In all their dealings and intercourse, Sir Walter Elliot must ever have the precedence. Nothing could be done without a reference to Elizabeth, but her inclination was growing so strong for a removal that she was happy to have it fixed and expedited by a tenant at hand, and not a word to suspend decision was uttered by her. Mr. Shepherd was completely empowered to act, and no sooner had such an end been reached than Anne, who had been a most attentive listener to the whole, left the room to seek the comfort of cool air for her flushed cheeks, and as she walked along a favorite grove, said, with a gentle sigh, "A few months more, and he, perhaps, may be walking here." Ooh. Who is he? This is the one thing I actually remembered about the book.
Ah, yes.
Chapter 4. He was not Mr. Wentworth, the former curate of Monkford, however suspicious appearances may be, but a Captain Frederick Wentworth, his brother, who being made commander in consequence of the action off St. Domingo, and not immediately employed, had come into Somersetshire in the summer of 1806, and having no parent living, found a home for half a year at Monkford. He was, at that time, a remarkably fine young man, with a great deal of intelligence, spirit, and brilliancy, and Anne an extremely pretty girl with gentleness, modest taste, and feeling. Half the sum of attraction on either side might have been enough, for he had nothing to do and she had hardly anybody to love. Oh boy, even Jane Austen seems a little bit like, I guess these people could be good together, whatever. Who really cares?
Well, but more like just like they fell together very naturally.
I know, it just seems like, I don't know. I guess the sentiment in modern romances is more to be like, they were meant for each other. They're perfect in every way, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But this is like, yeah, I guess they would do. Might as well.
Keep in mind, this is one of her last, if not her last novel.
Yes.
Like, she's pretty sensible right now.
It was the last novel she completed.
That's true.
Look that up.
She's pretty sensible about how this like falling in love stuff works.
Yeah, that's true. And in the time period is certainly, she may be mostly making a point that, like, look, they liked each other quite a lot. Honestly, if they'd liked each other half as much on either side, they probably would have ended up getting married because, like, you didn't take much in those days.
Right, yeah. But we know that Anne doesn't get out much.
Yes, it is true. But the encounter of such lavish recommendations could not fail. They were gradually acquainted, and when acquainted, rapidly and deeply in love. It would be difficult to say which had seen highest perfection in the other, or which had been the happiest, she in receiving his declarations and proposals, or he in having them accepted. A short period of exquisite felicity followed, and but a short one. Troubles soon arose. Sir Walter, on being applied to, without actually withholding his consent or saying it should never be, gave it all the negative of great astonishment, great coldness, great silence, and a professed resolution of doing nothing for his daughter. He thought it a very degrading alliance, and Lady Russell, though with more tempered and pardonable pride, received it as a most unfortunate one. Yeah, officially I don't like Lady Russell then.
Yep.
Anne Elliot, with all her claims of birth, beauty, and mind, to throw herself away at 19, involve herself at 19 in an engagement with a young man who had nothing but himself to recommend him, and no hopes of attaining affluence, but in the chances of a most uncertain profession, and no connections to secure even his farther rise in that profession, would be indeed a throwing away, which she grieved to think of. Anne Elliot, so young, known to so few, to be snatched off by a stranger without alliance or fortune, or rather sunk by him into a state of most wearing, anxious, youth-killing dependence? It must not be, if by any fair interference of friendship, any representations from one who had almost a mother's love and mother's rights, it would be prevented.
Yep.
Okay, sure, let's say you're like, oh, no, we have bigger plans for Anne, and obviously her feelings don't matter. But then what do they fucking do for her?
I know, right?
They won't even take her to Bath or to London or wherever they go.
Yeah. I mean,
isn't it? She goes they mentioned she goes to Bath with Lady Russell like one time.
Yeah.
But like otherwise she's barely left her neighborhood.
Yeah.
So like, what are you doing for her? If you do want to marry her off, you haven't tried.
Yeah.
Yeah. This poor Anne. Oh. Anne is a very put upon name in Jane Austen's eyes, I guess.
Yes.
I always feel for Anne de Bourgh. We know nothing to think that she's actually a bad person or anything.
Yeah, no.
In anything that is said about her in the book to indicate that she might be kind of unpleasant to be around is credited to being raised by her mother.
Yeah.
Like, she might be a perfectly nice person.
Yeah.
I one time was looking for something online to do with Pride and Prejudice and ran across a fanfic that was all about like Anne de Bourgh deserved better.
Oh yeah,
like, a whole fanfic about her like running off with some young man who her mother doesn't approve of or something.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
She might have wanted to. There's no indication. We don't know anything about her thoughts or feelings really. There's no indication that she cared about Mr. Darcy at all. There's no indication that she cared about anything her mother cares about.
Yeah. We get none of her personality at all.
She doesn't have any lines or anything.
I don't think she has any dialogue at all. No.
There's scenes that she could be in, but she also could not be in.
Yeah. Just around.
Yeah.
She comes to the house that one time.
Yes.
And with her is Miss Anne de Bourgh. We know that she was abominable for keeping Charlotte out in all that wind.
Yes.
But she's sickly herself. I suppose she probably thought she couldn't come in.
Yeah.
All right. Captain Wentworth had no fortune. He had been lucky in his profession, but spending freely what had come freely had realized nothing. But he was confident that he should soon be rich, full of life and ardor. He knew that he should soon have a ship, and soon be on a station that would lead to everything he wanted. He had always been lucky. He knew he should be so still. Such confidence, powerful in its own warmth and bewitching in the wit that often expressed it, must have been enough for Anne, but Lady Russell saw it very differently. His sanguine temper and fearlessness of mind operated very differently on her. She saw in it but an aggravation of the evil. It only added a dangerous character to himself. He was brilliant. He was headstrong. Lady Russell had little taste for wit, and of anything approaching to imprudence, a horror. She deprecated the connection in every light. Such opposition as these feelings produced was more than Anne could combat. Young and gentle as she was, it might yet have been possible to withstand her father's ill will, though unsoftened by one kind word or look on the part of her sister. But Lady Russell, whom she had always loved and relied on, could not, with such steadiness of opinion and such tenderness of manner, be continually advising her in vain. Yeah, she could. She was persuaded to believe the engagement a wrong thing. indiscreet, improper, hardly capable of success, and not deserving it. But it was not a merely selfish caution under which she acted in putting an end to it. Had she not imagined herself consulting his good even more than her own, she could hardly have given him up. The belief of being prudent and self-denying, principally for his advantage, was her chief consolation under the misery of a final parting, and every consolation was required, for she had to encounter all the additional pain of opinions on his side, totally unconvinced and unbending, and of his feeling himself ill-used by so forced a relinquishment. He had left the country in consequence.
Damn.
A few months had seen the beginning and the end of their acquaintance, but not with a few months ended Anne's share of suffering from it. Too real.
Yes.
Too real.
Especially because she doesn't go out anywhere or do anything.
Yeah, or meet anybody else.
All she has to think about is this one, very strong love.
Yep. Her attachment and regrets had, for a long time, clouded every enjoyment of youth, and an early loss of bloom and spirits had been their lasting effect. More than 7 years were gone since this little history of sorrowful interest had reached its close, and time had softened down much, perhaps nearly all of peculiar attachment to him. But she had been too dependent on time alone. No aid had been given in change of place, except in one visit to Bath soon after the rupture. What did I say? Or in any novelty or enlargement of society. No one had ever come within the Kellynch circle who could bear a comparison with Frederick Wentworth, as he stood in her memory. No second attachment, the only thoroughly natural, happy, and sufficient cure at her time of life, had been possible. To the nice tone of her mind, the fastidiousness of her taste, in the small limits of the society around them. She had been solicited, when about 22, to change her name by the young man who not long afterwards found a more willing mind in her younger sister. Oh!
Yep.
I forgot about that.
Yep.
And Lady Russell had lamented her refusal, for Charles Musgrove was the eldest son of a man whose landed property and general importance were second in that country only to Sir Walter's, and of good character and appearance, and however Lady Russell might have asked yet for something more while Anne was 19, she would have rejoiced to see her at 22, so respectably removed from the partialities and injustice of her father's house, and settled so permanently near herself.
Lady Russell!
3 years later, she's like, well, now it's fine.
Now that you're an old maid.
Yeah. Now that I've ruined you by taking away the only thing that ever made you happy.
Yeah. Also, I'd just like to note that one of her reasons for not marrying a sailor was that she would lose her youth too fast or whatever bullshit that is.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then she immediately lost it anyway.
Lost her bloom.
Yeah.
By being made
depressed.
Miserable. Yeah. Interesting that she had been solicited to change her name by a young man. It took my brain a second. I was halfway through the rest of that sentence before I went, oh, proposed to. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Tila is not a Lady Russell fan.
I confess, every time I read or see an adaptation or something, I try to understand why Anne loves her so much. And I mean, we're given to understand that she's like a mother,
to her, which everyone has had moments.
And it's hard not to like Lady Russell when she's advocating for retrenchment and reforms in the house. She's not a completely bad person.
Yeah,
she's just
she has
snob.
She has some good parts, but this is not one of them.
Yeah.
But in this case, Anne had left nothing for advice to do. And though Lady Russell, as satisfied as ever with her own discretion, never wished the past undone, she began now to have the anxiety which borders on hopelessness for Anne's being tempted, by some man of talents and independence, to enter a state for which she held her to be peculiarly fitted by her warm affections and domestic habits. They knew not each other's opinion, either its constancy or its change, on the one leading point of Anne's conduct, for the subject was never alluded to. But Anne, at 27, thought very differently from what she had been made to think at 19. She did not blame Lady Russell. Well, she should.
Mm-hmm.
But she felt that she did not blame Lady Russell. She did not blame herself for having been guided by her. But she felt that were any young person in similar circumstances to apply to her for counsel, they would never receive any of such certain immediate wretchedness, such uncertain future good. She was persuaded that under every disadvantage of disapprobation at home, and every anxiety attending his profession, all their probable fears, delays, and disappointments, she should yet have been a happier woman in maintaining the engagement than she had been in the sacrifice of it. And this she fully believed, had the usual share, had even more than the usual share of all such solicitudes and suspense been theirs, without reference to the actual results of their case, which, as it happened, would have bestowed earlier prosperity than could be reasonably calculated on. All his sanguine expectations, all his confidence, had been justified. His genius and ardor had seemed to foresee and to command his prosperous path. He had, very soon after their engagement ceased, got employ, and all that he had told her would follow had taken place. He had distinguished himself, and early gained the other step in rank, and must now, by successive captures, have made a handsome fortune. She had only navy lists and newspapers for her authority, but she could not doubt his being rich, and in favor of his constancy, she had no reason to believe him married. How eloquent could Anne Elliot have been? How eloquent, at least, were her wishes on the side of early warm attachment, and a cheerful confidence in futurity, against that over-anxious caution which seems to insult exertion and distrust providence. She had been forced into prudence in her youth. She learned romance as she grew older, a natural sequel of an unnatural beginning.
That's an oft-quoted line.
Oh,
she had been forced into prudence in her youth. She had learned romance. That whole...
The natural consequence of an unnatural beginning.
Yes.
That's a good line.
Yes. She learned romance as she grew older. Preach it, girl.
With all these circumstances, recollections, and feelings, she could not hear that Captain Wentworth's sister was likely to live at Kellynch without a revival of former pain, and many a stroll and many a sigh were necessary to dispel the agitation of the idea. She often told herself it was folly, before she could harden her nerves sufficiently to feel the continual discussion of the Crofts and their business no evil. She was assisted, however, by that perfect indifference and apparent unconsciousness among the only three of her own friends in the secret of the past, which seemed almost to deny any recollection of it. She could do justice to the superiority of Lady Russell's motives in this, over those of her father and Elizabeth. She could honor all the better feelings of her calmness, but the general air of oblivion among them was highly important from whatever it sprung, and in the event of Admiral Crofts really taking Kellynch Hall, she rejoiced anew over the conviction which had always been most grateful to her, of the past being known to those three only among her connections, by whom no syllable, she believed, would ever be whispered, and in the trust that among this, the brother only with whom he had been residing, had received any information of the short-lived engagement. That brother had been long removed from the country, and being a sensible man, and moreover a single man at the time, she had a fond dependence on no human creature's having heard it from him. The sister, Mrs. Croft, had then been out of England, accompanying her brother on her husband on a foreign station, and her own sister, Mary, had been at school while it all occurred, and never admitted by the pride of some and the delicacy of others to the smallest acknowledgment of it afterwards. With these supports, she hoped that the acquaintance between herself and the Crofts, which, with Lady Russell, still resident in Kellynch, and Mary, affixed only 3 miles off, must be anticipated, need not involve any particular awkwardness. Hell, at least nobody knows about it.
Yeah.
Be awkward.
Yeah. Oh my.
She's a little like Jane in that way. Like,
yeah.
I'm sure it'll be totally normal, and no one will think anything of it, and everything will be fine, and I will be a perfectly normal young lady, and everything will be okay.
Completely indifferent.
Yes, I keep trying to remember the exact line she says.
Oh yeah, I don't remember exactly. Something like, "We shall be no more than common and indifferent acquaintances."
Yes.
It's Lizzie who says yes, completely indifferent.
Yes. Oh, okay. Chapter 5. Wait, let's see. We're at 50 minutes. How long is chapter 5? Actually, I don't know. I got in this habit of going a bit long during Cowboy Feng.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I guess I I also would stop in the middle of a chapter and count my fangs. I guess I could do that technically again here.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Chapter 5. On the morning appointed for Admiral and Mrs. Croft seeing Kellynch Hall, Anne found it most natural to take her almost daily walk to Lady Russell's, and keeping out of the way till all was over, when she found it most natural to be sorry that she had missed the opportunity of seeing them. The meeting of the two parties proved highly satisfactory and decided the whole business at once. Each lady was previously well disposed for the agreement, and saw nothing therefore but good manners in the other. And with regard to the gentlemen, there was such a hearty good humour, such an open, trusting liberality on the Admiral's side, as could not but influence Sir Walter, who had besides been flattered into his very best and most polished behaviour by Mr. Shepherd's assurances of his being known by report to the Admiral as a model of good breeding.
Oh gosh!
Really, honestly, the persuasion on the part of Mr. Shepherd seems to be as one of the persuasions that the book is named after.
Yes.
The house and grounds and furniture were approved. The Crofts were approved. Terms, time, everything, and everybody was right. And Mr. Shepherd's clerks were set to work without there having been a single preliminary difference to modify of all that this indenture showeth. I assume that means that's like a common term, a phrase starting a contract of that sort.
I guess, yeah.
Sir Walter, without hesitation, declared the Admiral to be the best-looking sailor he had ever met with, and went so far as to say that, if his own man might have had the arranging of his hair, he would not be ashamed of being seen with him anywhere.
Wow.
Yeah, he looks pretty good for a sailor, and honestly, if he would see my barber, I wouldn't even mind being seen with him in public.
Yeah. Amazing. High praise indeed.
Really, for Sir Walter, it kind of is.
That's true. He's not even trying to cast shade.
Yeah. And the Admiral, with sympathetic cordiality, observed to his wife as they drove back through the park, "I thought we should soon come to a deal, my dear, in spite of what they told us at Taunton. The baronet will never set the Thames on fire, but there seems to be no harm in him."
I don't know what that means.
I know, but I really like nice when he's saying, well, he'll never set the Thames on fire, but he's just like someone who's like, well, they're a little bit boring or something like that, but like a nice person or something. Like, I don't think that's exactly what he's saying here.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, he'll never set the Thames on fire.
We need to make that phrase catch on again.
Yeah. We're gonna start along with a Derbyshire friend.
Yes.
We're gonna start making he'll never set the Thames on fire.
Which I have tried and had a few setbacks, but I'm still trying.
What? With Derbyshire friend?
Yeah, I used it one time, and I think I told you, like, the two people who commented on the post were like, I love that movie. And then someone else was like, I used to live there. I'm your Derbyshire friend. And I'm like, no, neither of you get it.
Don't get it at all. All right. Reciprocal compliments, which would have been esteemed about equal. That is pretty good.
That is great.
The Crofts were to have possession at Michaelmas, and Sir Walter proposed removing to Bath in the course of the preceding month. And as Sir Walter proposed removing to Bath in the course of the preceding month, there was no time to be lost in making every dependent arrangement. I have no idea when Michaelmas is, but why do people count time by it so often?
I was just trying to think of it too.
That's the only reason I know it is pronounced Michaelmas, not Michaelmas.
Yeah.
Because
I think it's close to Christmas, but
like, presumably,
I don't know on what side.
Yeah. Lady Russell, convinced that Anne would not be allowed to be of any use or any importance in the choice of the house which they were going to secure, was very unwilling to have her hurried away so soon, and wanting to make it possible for her to stay behind till she might convey her to Bath herself after Christmas. So before, apparently.
Okay.
But having engagements of her own, which must take her from Kellynch for several weeks, she was unable to give the full invitation she wished, and Anne, though dreading the possible heats of September in all the white glare of Bath, and grieving to forego all the influence so sweet and so sad of the autumnal months in the country, did not think that, everything considered, she wished to remain. It would be most right and most wise, and therefore must involve least suffering to go with the others. Esty says that Michaelmas is September 29th.
Okay. I was wrong. It is not close to Christmas.
Yeah.
Except insofar as fall is close to winter.
Yeah. According to Wikipedia, anyway.
Yeah, if I had my phone out, I would have my phone's in my room, but I would have just looked it up because I don't know either.
Good thing we have.
I also don't know when St. Crispin's Day is, and that's another one that gets referenced a bit.
All right. Something occurred, however, to give her a different duty. Mary, often a little unwell, and always thinking a great deal of her own complaints, and always in the habit of claiming Anne when anything was the matter, was indisposed, and foreseeing that she should not have a day's health all the autumn, entreated, or rather required her, for it was hardly entreaty, to come to Uppercross Cottage and bear her company as long as she could want her, instead of going to Bath. I cannot possibly do without Anne, was Mary's reasoning, and Elizabeth's reply was, then I am sure Anne had better stay, for nobody will want her in Bath. Wow.
Thanks,
I already had a pretty low opinion of Elizabeth, but that's harsh.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Also her idea of economizing by not bringing Anne a present.
Well, yeah. That's
Which
true.
Is also, it's foolish and also mean.
Yeah, I guess I saw that as more foolishness and sort of she might not directly say, well, Anne doesn't need a present.
Right.
I mean, you think, well, what's unnecessary? Oh, Anne's present.
Right.
But this, she outright says, it's in quotes, nobody will want her in Bath. That's pretty bold. To be claimed as a good, though in an improper style, is at least better than being rejected as no good at all. And Anne, glad to be thought of some use, glad to have anything marked out as a duty, and certainly not sorry to have the scene of it in the country, and her own dear country, readily agreed to stay. This invitation of Mary's removed all Lady Russell's difficulties, and it was consequently soon settled that Anne should not go to Bath till Lady Russell took her, and that all the intervening time should be divided between Uppercross Cottage and Kellynch Lodge.
Kellynch Lodge.
Right. Apparently. I guess that makes sense. They mentioned that Lady Russell is their tenant.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So I guess Kellynch Lodge is another house that's technically also on their land, but a smaller house.
I just assumed it was dreadful. I just assumed that they owned a lot of the surrounding.
Yeah, I guess it could just be another house, but the fact that it's also named Kellynch makes me think it might be probably there on their land. Yeah. So far, all was perfectly right, but Lady Russell was almost startled by the wrong of one part of the Kellynch Hall plan when it burst on her, which was Mrs. Clay's being engaged to go to Bath with Sir Walter and Elizabeth as a most important and valuable assistant to the latter in all the business before her. Not unreasonable. Elizabeth being like, oh, well, I should bring my particular friend to kind of help with the settling of the new house and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if she felt that way about her own damn sister.
Yeah.
So it goes.
Indeed.
And anyway, honestly, I'm delighted in Lady Russell being thwarted in anything.
Yeah.
Except
your genius plans not so genius.
Yeah. Anything to do with her trying to control people's relationships, anyway.
Yeah. Also, the whole reason whatever.
Lady Russell was extremely sorry that such a measure should have been resorted to at all, wondered, grieved, and feared, and the affront it contained to Anne, in Mrs. Clay's being of so much use, while Anne could be of none, was a very sore aggravation. All right, at least she has that.
Yeah.
That was established as part of her objection to Mrs. Clay, is that Elizabeth seems to prefer her society to that of Anne's.
Yeah.
So that is the one, as you said, Lady Russell is somewhat complicated.
Yeah.
Every now and then where she has a good quality. She has a good thought.
Yeah.
Anne herself was become hardened to such affronts, but she felt the imprudence of the arrangement quite as keenly as Lady Russell. With a great deal of quiet observation and a knowledge which she often wished less of her father's character, she was sensible that results the most serious to his family from the intimacy were more than possible.
They think that Mrs. Clay is a gold digger and she's gonna.
Oh. She was sensible that results the most serious to his family from the intimacy. That's just a weird sentence. Weird sentence.
Yeah.
Oh, as she said, I'm surprised Austen doesn't point out that keeping Mrs. Clay around as a companion to Elizabeth is an additional expense.
Yeah.
When they're trying to retrench.
Yeah.
That is a good point. It would make more sense to bring Anne. If Elizabeth needs help, bring Anne along.
Right, yeah.
She's already their responsibility.
Yes.
Anyway. She did not imagine that her father had at present any idea of the kind. Oh, wow. Mrs. Clay had freckles and a projecting tooth and a clumsy wrist, which he was continually making severe remarks upon in her absence. But she was young and certainly altogether well-looking and possessed in an acute mind and assiduous, pleasing manners, infinitely more dangerous attractions than any merely personal might have been. So they think she's going to try to marry Sir Walter?
Mm-hmm. Just kind of like by hanging around.
Oh,
always being there.
That is a good point. Esty points out that they're not paying for Anne's food and such when she's staying with Mary. That would be considered, Mary and her husband's responsibility to feed and clothe her if necessary, and what have you.
Yeah.
So I guess
they're all going to be together in Bath.
Yeah, eventually. I don't know how long Mrs. Clay is going to stay in Bath, I guess.
Yeah.
Anne was so impressed by the degree of their danger that she could not excuse herself from trying to make it perceptible to her sister. She had little hope of success, but Elizabeth, who in the event of such a reverse would be so much more to be pitied than herself, should never, she thought, have reason to reproach her for giving no warning. She spoke and seemed only to offend. Elizabeth could not conceive how such an absurd suspicion could occur to her, and indignantly answered for each party's perfectly knowing their situation. Mrs. Clay, said she warmly, never forgets who she is. And as I am rather better acquainted with her sentiments than you can be, I can assure you that upon the subject of marriage they are particularly nice, and that she reprobates all inequality of condition and rank more strongly than most people. Does she? And as to my father, I really should not have thought that he, who has kept himself single so long for our sakes, need be suspected now. If Mrs. Clay were a very beautiful woman, I grant you it might be wrong to have her so much with me. Not that anything in the world, I am sure, would induce my father to make a degrading match, but he might be rendered unhappy. But poor Mrs. Clay, who with all her merits can never have been reckoned tolerably pretty, and I really think poor Mrs. Clay may be staying here in perfect safety. Oh, you talk so kindly about your best friend.
Yep.
One would imagine you had never heard my father speak of her personal misfortunes, though I know you must 50 times. That tooth of hers and those freckles. Freckles do not disgust me so very much as they do him. I have known a face not materially disfigured by few, but he abominates them. You must have heard him notice Mrs. Clay's freckles. There is hardly any personal defect, replied Anne, which an agreeable manner might not gradually reconcile one to. I think very differently, answered Elizabeth shortly. An agreeable manner may set off handsome features, but can never alter plain ones. However, at any rate, as I have a great deal more at stake on this point than anybody else can have, I think it rather unnecessary in you to be advising me. Yeah, Elizabeth's a bitch. As Dusty points out, Elizabeth doesn't want an equal, she wants an entourage.
Yes.
True. And maybe that's part of why she prefers Mrs. Clay's society. Though even though Anne is her inferior in the sense of being younger and not as beautiful, it's more marked with Mrs. Clay.
Yeah.
Mrs. Clay is practically her employee,
She likes to have the distinction of rank preserved.
Yes. Oh yeah, Elizabeth is definitely an Anne de Bergen training. I'm now not at all surprised that the young Mr. Elliot was not interested.
Yeah, seriously.
In marrying her.
Yeah. Even if he was a bit rude about it. But
yeah.
I mean,
I feel it's possible.
Too,
yeah.
So
I was at the time. I was very like, dude, why would you be so rude to your people?
Also, wasn't that the report that they received? They didn't actually it was just conveyed to them that was what he did.
Oh yeah, that's true. Who knows? Anne had done. Anne had done. Glad that it was over, and not absolutely hopeless of doing good. Elizabeth, though resenting the suspicion, might yet be made observant by it. The last office of the 4 carriage horses was to draw Sir Walter, Miss Elliot, and Mrs. Clay to Bath. The party drove off in very good spirits. Sir Walter prepared with condescending bows for all the afflicted tenantry and cottagers who might have had a hint to show themselves, and Anne walked up at the same time in a sort of desolate tranquility to the lodge, where she was to spend the first week. That's what I think there's that supports my idea that the lodge is like on their land, because it makes it sound like the carriage carried them away, and then Anne just had to walk to the lodge.
Did they say something about? Wasn't it after both their spouses died that Lady Russell did come to live closer to them or something?
Yeah.
I can't remember if they said that she actually.
They said she settled near them.
Yeah.
Partially due to her affection for the late.
I guess they didn't say
Lady
precisely how closely. Yeah. But it would make sense if she wanted to be within easy walking distance.
Yeah. Her friend was not in better spirits than herself. Lady Russell felt this breakup of the family exceedingly. Their respectability was as dear to her as her own, and a daily intercourse had become precious by habit. It was painful to look upon their deserted grounds, and still worse to anticipate the new hands they were to fall into, and to escape the solitariness and the melancholy of so altered a village, and be out of the way when Admiral and Mrs. Croft first arrived. She had determined to make her own absence from home begin when she must give up Anne. STI, it would seem so. I was remembering something from the movie that Anne sticks around after them to close up the house or something.
Yeah, there's that too.
That's that might be sort of implied. That's why she walks afterwards, but she doesn't say that. Accordingly, their removal was made together, and Anne was set down at Uppercross Cottage in the first stage of Lady Russell's journey. Uppercross was a moderate-sized village, which a few years back had been completely in the Old English style, containing only 2 houses superior in appearance to those of the yeomen and labourers, the mansion of the squire with its high walls, great gates, and old trees, substantial and unmodernized, and the compact, tight parsonage, enclosed within its own neat garden, with a vine and a pear tree trained round its casements. But upon the marriage of the young squire, it had received the improvement of a farmhouse, elevated into a cottage for his residence, and Uppercross Cottage, with its veranda, French windows, and other prettinesses, was quite as likely to catch the traveller's eye as the more consistent and considerable aspect and premises of the great house, about a quarter of a mile further on. Here Anne had often been staying. She knew the ways of Uppercross as well as those of Kellynch. The 2 families were so continually meeting, so much in the habit of running in and out of each other's houses at all hours, that it was rather a surprise to her to find Mary alone. But being alone, her being unwell and out of spirits, was almost a matter of course. Though better endowed than the elder sister, Mary had not Anne's understanding or temper. While well and happy and properly attended to, she had great good humor and excellent spirits, but any indisposition sunk her completely. She had no resources for solitude, and inheriting a considerable share of the Elliots' self-importance, was very prone to add to every other distress that of fancying herself neglected and ill-used. In person, she was inferior to both sisters, and had, even in her bloom, only reached the dignity of being a fine girl. She was now lying on the faded sofa of the pretty little drawing-room, the once elegant furniture of which had been gradually growing shabby, under the influence of 4 summers and 2 children, and on Anne's appearing, greeted her with, "So you are come at last. I began to think I should never see you. I am so ill I can hardly speak. I have not seen a creature the whole morning." Young Mrs. Bennet, pretty much.
Yep.
"I am sorry to find you unwell," replied Anne. "You sent me such a good account of yourself on Thursday." "Yes, I made the best of it. I always do. But I was very far from well at the time, and I do not think I ever was so ill in my life as I have been all this morning. Very unfit to be left alone, I am sure. Suppose I were to be seized of a sudden in some dreadful way, and not able to ring the bell, so Lady Russell would not get out. I do not think she has been in this house 3 times this summer. I just realized we're just at an hour and 10 minutes, and I just launched into basically like a new section. So I'm actually this is not a good place to end, but I'm actually going to end it here before we get any farther into the conversation between Anne and Mary, because I can see that continues for another couple of pages to the end of the chapter. So I should have ended it with them leaving Kellynch Hall, but what are you going to do? I was just caught up in it.
Yes.
So anyway.
The riveting story.
Yes, I'm going to end there. You just want to get to something happening.
Yeah.
This book does feel like it spends a lot of time explaining the situation and kind of working its way up to anything actually happening.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm going to end there, and we'll pick it up tomorrow. And I might go back to when she first arrives at Uppercross Cottage.
That's a good idea.
Tomorrow. So tomorrow, 6:30, we will start again. Also, just to let people know, I'm not going to be doing a stream on Friday because the Subdued String Band Jamboree, which is a festival I would normally be at this weekend in the normal times, is doing live streams of some outdoor concerts on Friday and Saturday. So also, my brother, Aaron, did the music for a new musical a couple of years ago, and they are finally going to be sharing the video of one of the performances, and it is going to be live streaming on Friday night as well. So those are 2 excellent things that you guys should also check out. So I won't be doing a stream on Friday, and plus, I deserve a day off I deserve a 3-day weekend for my birthday, don't I?
Yes.
My birthday's on Saturday. Did I mention that? Anyway, so there will not be a reading on Friday, but I will be back tomorrow and on Thursday. So hopefully we'll get into some good stuff. SU Rovers. The musical is it's about Mars rovers, and it imagines them as if all of the robots that we've ever sent to Mars are having a summer camp there. It's super adorable, you guys. I love it so much. It was so good. And the music was great, but like, it was just such a fun show. Like, I immediately was like, you guys need to do like a proper staged video, like filmed version of this and release it online. Like, the world needs to see this. But all that takes money. And then sadly, since then we've lost opportunity. So I don't know. If they were going to like properly relaunch the show, I don't know. They might have to like either rewrite it or something. I don't know. Yeah, Aaron's linking to the event for the show and to his home demos of some of the songs. I wish at least they'd been able to do a cast recording of the songs. Like, I love Aaron's demos of them too, but just having the characters actually sing the songs, it's a great thing. Anyway, it's great. It's a musical about robots in space going to summer camp. What more do you want?
Right.
In life.
Exactly.
It was very fun. So yeah, that's that. I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a good night. Oh, also, we just sent another robot, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
We just launched another robot, so it would just have to be rewritten. But I could do some good rewriting. There could be some good stuff, I feel like. Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway. Bye.